Mr. Christopher De Souza.
Sir, this year's budget is flexible. It is clinical in its approach to dealing with what Singapore needs in the future. It is not bogged down with theoretical purity. It is relevant and bold. It provides assistance to those who need it most. It does not discourage prosperity, nor does it discourage diligence. It allows Singapore to remain competitive. In short, this year's budget is ambidextrous, a mix of left and right-leaning policies. It shows that we are not concerned as much about theoretical purity as we are about doing what is correct in each circumstance. Sir, unbridled capitalism as well as extreme socialism are to be avoided. Both have negative effects on populations. There are problems with either extremes in economic theories. From the now dissolved USSR, we can see that there is a problem with socialism in the form of Marxist communism. Even in China, we see the need for exceptions to socialism in the form of free economic zones in Shenzhen and other designated cities, and the special administrative region in Hong Kong. Today, Shenzhen is known as the Silicon Delta. Hence, even socialism needs exceptions to survive. On the other extreme, we see the breakdowns of pure capitalism, unbridled capitalism. According to David Corton, extreme capitalism has the same problems as that of extreme Marxist socialism. For example, economic power concentrates in an unaccountable centralized institutions. In the state in the case of Marxism, and the transnational cooperation in the case of capitalism. The rich get richer and the poor get poorer. This is because those who control wealth accumulate it at a faster rate than the economy can produce it. This trend continues unless something disrupts the status quo. Müller, the author of The Mind and the Market, Capitalism in Western Thought, says it this way: inequality is an inevitable product of capitalist activity. Indeed, one of the most robust findings of contemporary social scientific inquiry is that as the gap between high-income and low-income families has increased, the educational and employment achievement gaps between the children of these families has increased even more. Hence, pure, unbridled capitalism has its problems, that of extreme, entrenched income divides. Therefore, what we need in Singapore is to have a flexible fiscal policy. We cannot be rigid or be slaves to fiscal ideology just for ideology's sake. And this is, in my view, what this budget seeks to achieve. Financial analyst Ram Ramesh wrote in the Trinidad Express, and he expresses it this way: labels such as socialism and capitalism are making men in power forget that their role is to administer the right medicine regardless of what label it carries. In these times, it is not the philosophical underpinnings that will guarantee organizations' survival, but their own ability to adapt to rapidly changing economic landscapes. Not adapting can cause their very survival, unquote. In other words, when we are too inflexible, we are unable to respond to changing situations. When we are too concerned about avoiding a certain label or fitting into a particular mold, we tie ourselves to a deadweight and we lose. Therefore, what we need is a flexible approach, an economic policy for our time, for our future, and for the best for Singapore. An array of fiscal options should be on the table, with one caveat, that our foundations do not change. What are these foundations? 1, a strong military. 2, securing our water supply. 3, stewardship, that is making difficult national decisions today for the sake of a better future tomorrow. 4, freedom of religion. 5, education. There are more foundations, but to me, these are among the most crucial. Therefore, what we need is a flexible fiscal policy anchored onto unshakable foundations, but without a single-minded fixation on theoretical purity. Dr. Goh Keng Swee was known for being a practical economist. doing what works and not necessarily aiming for theoretical purity in economics. An example is in how he envisioned an important role for the state government promotion of public goods and externalities through institutions such as the EDB and the JTC, while being, for the most part, a believer in the efficacy of the markets and the private enterprise system. This illustrates how we should not be afraid to try less popular policies and be free to think out of the box. Just as that economy policy was suited for its time, we too need an economic policy that speaks to our time, not just our current needs, but for our future together as well. This year's budget is flexible. It is clinical in its approach to dealing with what Singapore needs in the future. In short, this year's budget is ambidextrous. As I said, a mix of left and right-leaning policies. On the one hand, we have policies leaning towards the left. And on the other hand, we have policies leaning towards the right. As regards the left, the increase in GST will be implemented in a way that tries to ease the extra burden on lower-income families. The permanent GST voucher scheme will be increased, and offset packages will help families adjust to the increase. The budget also looks to render more support for healthcare and education by having more meal coverage for secondary school students under the school meals program and increasing the merit bursary quantum for pre-university students. There is also a review on subsidizing premiums to ElderShield for lower and middle income to keep healthcare affordable. We are doing all this while also retaining and preserving some right-leaning policies. For example, personal income tax was not increased, nor was corporate tax. Indeed, this budget continues to subsidize business costs, employers and business owners through the continuation of the wage credit scheme, the enhanced extended corporate income tax rebate, and the productivity solutions grant. This is why I view the budget as a strategic fiscal plan to meet the needs of Singapore and Singaporeans present and future. It is also the reason why I do not agree with Mr. Pritam Singh's criticism of the budget. If I heard correctly, Mr. Singh mentioned that he is unable to support the GST hike at this point in time. I take that to mean that he is not close to a GST hike, but just not at this point in time. I also take it that Mr. Singh knows that we are not raising the GST now. Therefore, the real query for us to answer is this: why are we announcing now a hike that is to take place 3 years or more from today? The answer is stewardship, honesty, and being upfront with the people we serve. These are the expenditures we must meet. 1, healthcare for all Singaporeans, including those who helped to build Singapore. The budget for Ministry of Health has grown from 4 billion in 2010 to 10 billion this year to at least 13 billion from 2020. This includes expanding healthcare infrastructure such as public hospital, community hospital, and nursing home capacity, enhanced subsidies for specialist outpatient clinics, as well as intermediate and long-term care, and subsidies on premiums on MediShield Life. This also accommodates longer life expectancy and an aging population. 2, security. There is even more need to take action and strengthen our security and defense in the face of turbulent geopolitics and the threat of a terror attack at its highest. In 2011, spending by MHA, MINDEF, and MFA on security was $14.8 billion and has since increased to $19.5 billion on security in 2016, 32%, amounting to about a quarter of the national budget. More cameras are being installed, video trawling and analytics systems to detect, track, and recognize faces is being developed, and officers are being trained with simulations and are being equipped with pistols that can hold more bullets. Further, all MHA's departments are expected to be housed at a single complex by 2023 for better coordinated responses in a crisis. Expenditure number 3, education. To help everyone reach his or her potential, expenditure per child has increased. This starts even at a young age. By 2020, spending on the preschool sector will be at $1.7 billion per year. It is a colossal task. to give every child a good foundation from a younger age, especially preschool. But we are doing just that. We are also rolling out programs to increase financial literacy, digital skills, and helping mid-career Singaporeans to reskill and upskill in the changing economic landscape. So revenue raising must go up. One way is to raise the GST, and we are being upfront with the people we serve. That is honest politics. And that is why I disagree with Mr. Lau's position that we should not have disclosed the future GST increase now so as to get, quote, buy-in, unquote, for the broader vision of this budget. But my counter is this. We cannot conceal from the people we serve that this revenue will be needed in 3 or more years. That is transparent politics. Much of the increased expenditure is important for meeting the needs of Singaporeans in the long term. For the future, that principle of stewardship is not to be scoffed at or dismissed lightly. It is a very rare commodity. Mr. Singh also mentioned that we keep on piling accolades on people at the top. That took me by surprise, and I would like to respond to that point because the statement goes against a lot of what I and many in this House stand for. In fact, many of us in this House stand for the uplifting of the vulnerable. We do speak for the voiceless, and we celebrate each step taken towards a better life. Let me give a concrete constituency example, which also responds to Ms. Sylvia Lim's point about rental home dwellers. A resident whom I serve currently stays in a rental flat with his wife and 3 daughters. All 5 of them. Their daughters are all studying at the moment, one in junior college, the other in polytechnic, and the eldest at university. Recently, he shared with me that the family has secured a HDB loan, and they will be moving to a flat they can call their own. So he will be a homeowner. It reminds me of another family, single mother who worked as a security guard to raise her family, living in a rental flat. We worked hard to piece together an appeal to HDB for her to purchase her own HDB flat. The approval was given. I should say thank you to HDB for that. And she is now a homeowner. We both celebrated when we heard the news. That is upward mobility. That is social mobility. How could that happen? Flexible economic policies, caring for the lower income, and at the same time being business-friendly so that the economy thrives, and being honest with the people we serve about Singaporeans' future needs and how to meet them. Mr. Pritam Singh has suggested using the revenue raised from land sales to fund expenditure. In particular, Mr. Singh suggested a cap on the amount of earnings that can be used, such as not more than 20% of the value of average land sales over 20 years, or 20% of land sales for that year, whichever is lower. The point here is that we do not want to build in a formula which promotes indiscriminate or rash sales of land to increase revenue for immediate spending. The suggestion on 20% of land sales for that year does not solve that issue. Neither would value of average land sales over 20 years resolve that issue, as 1, land sales revenue can fluctuate over a long period of time, and 2, even if it is pegged to the average land sales over 20 years, this average can be pushed upward each year through more and more sales. Hence, instead of building in a formula which promotes possible indiscriminate quick sales of land to increase revenue for immediate spending, it is more fiscally prudent to allow land sales to form part of the reserves and then investing those reserves to achieve healthy NRRC. Ms. Sylvia Lim is of the view that because the reversionary title of 10 or 99-year leases returned to the government, land sales is not one-off, that we can use the revenue from land sales and not put all of that in our reserves. The point is not that the reversionary lease returns to the government, but that the reversionary lease only returns to the government 100 years later or 10 years later, and you would have spent the income from the sales this year. This does not lend itself to financial prudence. It is better to treat revenue generated from land sales as reserves, invest it, and use the net income from it up to 50%. So, as stewards of our resources for the next generation of Singaporeans, we need to be accountable and responsible to make Singapore even more livable and stronger for the next generation. As stewards, we cannot have a single-minded fixation on theoretical purity. So, when we see someone's success or progress as benefiting the community, we win as a people. When the government projects far into the future and takes decisive fiscal action now, we win as a state. And when we are able to see that where we are born is not where we will end, we win as a nation. On the basis that we are called to be stewards in this House, I support the budget.